Okay, so today we're doing lesson 8-4. It is different from the other lessons that we've done, so this is kind of new. So we have been working with a quadratic equation. And the normal quadratic equation that we have been working with is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, right? That's what we've been doing. But we're looking at a new form of a quadratic equation. It's called vertex form, because within that equation, you can find the vertex of the parabola just by looking at it. And then once you have that vertex, if you wanted to graph a parabola, all you need is 1 point lower than the x and 1 point higher than the x, and you can easily graph a parabola, okay? So it's always best with a quadratic equation if you start with the vertex. So before, when we had this form right here, we used the axis of symmetry equation, which was negative b over 2a, right, to find the vertex. And then we used that vertex to find two other points, and it was easy to do that. We eliminated the guess and check method. So I am going to teach you today how to read a vertex form of an equation so that it will be easy to graph. All right. Now with this equation, every variable represents something different. Okay, so I am going to go over what each of these variables represent. Let me grab a pen. Okay. So the A here tells you whether the parabola will open up or down. Well, it's actually if there is a negative. Okay, so if you have a negative A, it will open down. A positive A opens up. Okay, so that is something that you can be able to identify just by looking at whether the A is negative or positive. Okay. The H tells you the X of the vertex. So remember, the vertex is the center point of your parabola. The X is where your axis of symmetry goes through. So this would be the X of your ordered pair. Okay. And then the K tells you the Y of your ordered pair. Okay. And then the X and the F of X are some ordered pair located on the parabola. And so we're going to look at a parabola right here. I'm going to go over what each of these mean by looking at a parabola, and then we're going to practice graphing them on the next page. Okay. So is your A here going to be positive or negative because it opens up? It's going to be positive. Remember, when it's positive, it opens up. Okay. If you look at H, remember H up here tells you the X of your vertex. So H here would be a -1 because that's the X of your vertex, and your vertex is right here, which is -1, -2. And then the K is the Y of your vertex, so it would be -2. And there are several points on this parabola. We could choose any one of them. In this case, I've chosen 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and 6. So I've chosen this point right here, which is 3, 6. Okay. So if we were to write the equation for this, we would have f of x equals, is our A going to be positive or negative? Positive, so we have A, which is gonna be positive. And then we're gonna have times X. And then our H, what is our H? Our H represents the X of the vertex. Our H is a -1. Now, we have to be really careful with this because in the formula up here, or in the equation, it's minus whatever H is. So if we have minus a -1, okay? And then we have our K. Our K is the Y of the vertex, which is -2, so -2. Now, going back to the H, we don't write it as minus a negative, right? What we do is we write it as, we change it to adding the opposite. So really that would be X plus 1, not X minus a negative. So by looking at all these factors of a vertex form of an equation, we can easily create the equation and we can graph the parabola. All right, so this part down here is just an example. So if you wanted to, it's an example of one part of how to solve for this, but we're gonna go ahead and go on to page 2 first, and we're gonna go over all of these characteristics of a vertex form of an equation. And we're gonna do this multiple times so you get the hang of it. Yes.
So, what do you think that
Okay. Thank you for saying that. F of X here, if you look up here, all this is Y. F of X means Y. Because when you get into deeper algebra, I would say maybe algebra 2, pre-calc, what happens is if you have two equations graphed on a graph, they want to be able to differentiate between the two equations. So one might be named F of H and the other one might be F of G, or F of A and F of B. That way you can tell the difference between the two graphed equations. So I do not mind if in this class, if you change all of your F of X's to Y's. Okay, it will make it easier for you also. And I'll be doing that in the notes. Okay. Good question. Okay. Let's look at this first example. And I'm going to go ahead and label this so that you know, just as a reminder from the previous page, so we don't have to keep flipping back. This is our A. Okay. This here is our H. And this is our K. And if you can't remember, just think it goes in alphabetical order. All right. Now, what do the X and the F of X represent? What do the X and the Y represent? Do you remember from the other page? The F of X here is Y from an ordered pair. And I'm just going to put OP for ordered pair. And this X is the X of an ordered pair. What ordered pair? Any ordered pair on the graph. Okay, we could choose any ordered pair. So let's go ahead and fill this out. What is A? It is a positive 6. Okay, I'm gonna. So A is 6. What is H? Okay. I'm glad you said this. A lot of people would say -5.
But you gotta put the plus.
Right. This is the subtraction symbol is part of the formula. So the 5 is actually positive, and that confuses people a lot of the time. This will be one of the very few times that you don't pull the sign with the number. So it is actually a positive 5. Now, if this were a positive, if it was X plus 5, then the 5 would be negative. So it's the opposite of what you would think. The one, you do carry the negative with the one, so the K is a -1. Okay. So what we're gonna do here is we need to find 2 points that we can graph with our vertex. So if we were to graph our vertex, what is our vertex? Okay. And we're gonna write this here. Your vertex is HK. That's your vertex. So if we were to graph our vertex, our H is 5 and our K is -1. So we're gonna plot that on our graph. We're gonna do 5, -1. So that's our vertex. But how many points do we need to graph a parabola? We need 3, so we need 2 more points. Okay, so remember what I said, when you are graphing a parabola and you have an X value, we have 5, what should we choose for the X of our next 2 points? One higher and one lower. So what I'm gonna choose is I'm gonna choose one higher, which is 6, and one lower, which will be 4. Does that make sense? One higher than 5, one lower than 5. So let's go ahead and we are going to write out this equation up here. I'm going to use y.
Wait, so why did we not change the negative? Because it's not in the parentheses?
Because the formula says plus k.
Oh.
So if it is a negative, we carry the negative with it. So our equation up at the top, it's right here, is y equals 6 times x minus 5 squared minus 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug the x in the 2 points. We're going to plug that in to solve for our y, so that now we have an ordered pair to graph. So in this case, we have y equals 6 times, and I'm going to use this ordered pair up here for x, 6 minus 5 squared minus 1. And now I can solve for y. So y equals 6 times 6 minus 5 is 1. 1 squared minus 1. And then 1 squared is just 1. So I'm solving using order of operations here. You have to do what's in parentheses first, then you do your exponents. Now I do y equals 6 times 1, which is 6. And y equals 5. So when x is 6, we plug 6 in, y is going to be 5. And we can graph that on our grid. 6, 5 right here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to solve for our third point, 4. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did here, but we're going to plug 4 into the x. So we have y equals 6 times, we're going to use 4 for x, 4 minus 5 squared minus 1. Now, if you remember the pattern, we should get 5. Okay, so go ahead and solve this. And when you graph your parabola, it should look something like this. Remember, parabolas are U-shaped. I always like to graph 5. It's a little bit easier when you sketch your parabola, but we really only need 3. Okay. Are there any questions so far on how to do this part? This was a lot of information. Okay, a lot of information. So any questions so far? All right, now we're going to find the domain and range. Okay, we're going back to what we did in the previous two lessons. What would the domain of our parabola be? Anyone? Good. No, this would be the domain. So the domain is negative infinity less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to infinity. And so now we need to find our range. Now remember, with the range, I always write this part out first, and then I look at either my minimum or maximum. My minimum here is, it's a minimum because it's opened upward, and my minimum is -1. And all my y's are going to be greater than that -1. So if y is going to be greater than my -1, I look at my inequality, and this is y is greater than, and I put my -1 here and my infinity over here, because all my y's will go up continuously without end. Okay. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and do example 2. With example 2, and I know we've only done one example, I want you to try on your own to find A, H, and K. I think that you guys will be able to do that. And then the vertex, and I want you to plot that vertex. Okay? So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to find A, H, and K. And I'm going to pause the video. Okay, be ready to answer. Jorge, what is A? -2. What does this -2 tell us is going to happen with the graph? Okay. Yeah, that's right. It'll have a maximum, which tells us that the graph will open which way, up or down? It's down. Exactly. Good. Esther, what is our H? -4. A lot of students will put +4, but because that's a negative, that means that we're going to minus a -4, which makes it a +4 according to the equation. So this would be a +4. Tyson, what is our K?
6.
6. Keegan, what would be our vertex?
It would be -4, 6.
So it's actually going to be +4, 6. Oh, -4, 6. Sorry. No. Yes. Ooh, sorry. Did I not put a negative here? That should have been a -4. I didn't write the -4. I was looking at my 4 thinking, no, it's positive. Okay, good. So now what we have to do is we are going to, and I didn't draw the table up here because I was running out of room, but we need 3 points. We already have, oops, we already have 1 point. We have our vertex. I'm going to put that in the middle. It's -4, 6. So now we need 1 point below it and 1 point above it. So we're going to use -5 and -3. Okay. And so I'm going to write the equation from example 2. Y equals -2 times x plus 4 squared plus 6. And so what we're going to do with this is we're going to plug -5 in the x and solve for y, and -3 in for x, solve for y. And now we'll have all of our 3 ordered pairs to graph. Okay. So I'm going to do this first one with you, and then you're going to do the next one on your own. So we have y equals -2 times -5 plus 4 squared plus 6. And the first thing we have to solve is what is in parentheses, which is -5 plus 4. We get a -1. The next thing we're going to solve is our exponent, which is -1 squared, which is 1. Then we solve for multiplication. -2 times 1 is -2. And then we solve our addition. And when when x is -5, y will be a +4. Now again, when we plug in for -3, we should get a 4 because our parabola is mirrored, okay? So let's go ahead and I want you to go ahead and plug in for -3. I want you to solve for y and see what you get. And I'm going to pause my video. All right, David, what'd you get for this one? When x is -3, what is y? 4. All right, so this is what you should have gotten. Now, once we have our ordered pairs, we're going to graph our parabola. So go ahead and do that. And your parabola should look like that. Oh, didn't see it. Okay, what I want you to do now on your own is try to figure out the domain and range. We've done this a lot in other lessons, so you should be able to figure this out on your own. So I'm going to pause the video and let you guys work on this. Okay, so we know that the domain is the -infinity less than or equal to x less than or equal to infinity. Tyson, what is the range?
Is it 6, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, y greater or equal to, infinity?
Yeah, so you read it, did you put your 6 on this side or this side?
Just on the left.
Okay, so you want to put it on the right side because if you look at your maximum, all your y's are going to be less than. So a lot of students are thinking that this is the greater than side and this is the less than side, just because left is typically less than right when you're looking at a number line. But make sure you're looking at the inequalities. Okay. So that is one part of this lesson. That's only one part. And if you look at, let's see, if you look at 15 through 18 on your homework, that is going to be graphing the parabolas. Okay, so you're going to have to sketch a graph of each of these functions. So the homework 15 through 18, you're going to have to create a table of values and graph. And you're going to want to use, and I would probably write this here, use the vertex H, K, and then create a table. Okay, and that will help you with these 4 problems. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and go on to page 2. And I think those are the only ones you have to graph on that. So, all right. Now we're going to continue to read our equation. So what is the vertex in this equation? And remember, vertex is HK, and we can label this up here. You can label this as much as you want. A, H, K. Okay. So what is the vertex? Somebody want to tell me what that is? Esther. Yep. So we're going to have +3, and then what's our K? -10. Okay, so in the equation, and I'll go back to the first page. So Jorge asked, why do we change it from a -3 to a +3? In our equation, it's x minus h, right? So in here, this is x minus 3. And so that has to be a +3, because if it was x plus 3, that means it would be minus a -3. So anytime this is negative, there's a subtraction, you're going to make it positive. Anytime it's addition, it'll be negative. Okay. All right. So let's, if you remember, if our vertex is 3, -10, we should know our axis of symmetry. So what is our axis of symmetry when the vertex is 3, -10? 3. So x equals 3. Okay, we want to know if this is a minimum or maximum, and this has everything to do with how the graph opens. Does it open up or does it open down? So Keegan, will this graph open up or down, and how do you know? It's okay if you don't know. Okay, Jorge.
Wait, it's plus AB opens, but I think it's standard, so.
Yeah, so Jorge said if it's positive, it's always going to open up. So the A is a positive. So we know that it is going to open up right here. Okay. And if it opens up, do we have a minimum or a maximum? It opens up and say my head is the vertex. Huh? Yeah, you're gonna have a minimum. So your minimum will open up, your maximum will open down. So
Every day, it's positive, it's negative, it's maximum.
yeah, so we're gonna have a minimum here. And it's going to be y equals -10. And that helps you when you're doing your range. So we know that the domain is going to be -infinity is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to infinity. Now we have to figure out the range. So, and notice that we're doing this without graphing, because we really don't need to graph to know this information. So I always start with less than or equal to y, less than or equal to something. Okay, so if we have a minimum, are our y's going to be greater than or less than?
Oh, it's gonna be left side.
It's going to be greater than, yep, it is going to be on the left side. So that we're going to take our y of -10 and bring that down here. And then we have infinity on this side. So when we have a minimum, then y is going to be greater than or equal to 10. If we had a maximum, that means that we would have something over here. Okay, by putting these up here, these little notes, jotting those down, it will help you when it comes to the homework. Okay. Okay, now we're going to take this equation and we're going to put it into standard form. What is standard form? You guys remember?
AB X squared, AB plus.
Okay, you guys are on the right track. So standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So we're going to take the vertex form of the equation we were given, and we're going to turn it into standard form. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to write out the equation up at the top. So f of x or y equals 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 10. And all we're going to do here is we are going to solve it. Okay, we're going to solve it so that we get it in standard form. And let me show you how we do this. Okay, we take 2 and we multiply it by x minus 3 times x minus 3. Because if you remember, when you have a binomial squared, it's 2 binomials minus 10. The next thing you want to do is you want to do your distributing. So we're going to distribute these 2 binomials out. So we end up with 2 times x, which is x squared, x times a -3, which is -3x, -3 times x, which is -3x, and -3 times -3, which is a +9. End your parentheses and don't forget that -10. Now what we have to do, so we did this first. Now we're going to combine our like terms. So we end up with 2 times x squared minus 6x plus 9 minus 10.
That's,
Nope, we're not done. We still have the 2 and the negative 10 to deal with. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to distribute our 2. So when you distribute the 2, 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times negative 6 is negative 12x. And 2 times 9 is 18. Minus 10. Almost done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to combine like terms again. And we're going to take 18 minus 10. And this would be our final answer. Y equals 2x squared minus 12x plus 8. Okay. And there, we finished that problem. Lots of information going on in this lesson. Okay. What I would like for you to do now is I want you to fill out as much of this in example 4 that you can. I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. If you're understanding it and you can go ahead and start on the standard form, do so. But I'll check back in about a minute and we'll see if you have all of this information correct. And I'm going to pause the video. Okay, go ahead and check to make sure you got all the key characteristics of the vertex equation down correctly. And if you didn't, try to see where you might have made the mistake. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, so I'm going to get you started on converting the vertex form to the standard form. I'm just going to get you started and then I'm going to have you finish it. So here we have a negative. What is the coefficient of a negative? 1. So it's going to be negative 1 times x plus 2 times x plus 2 plus 7. You're going to distribute first. And if you want to jot these notes down, the first thing is you're going to write it out. So write out. 2, you're going to distribute binomials. 3, you're going to multiply by coefficient. And then 4, you're going to add or subtract. Okay, so those 4 steps will help you to turn these into standard form. Okay, did you guys finish this already? You did?
so okay, if I like skip this step, like when you I solved for x plus 2 times x plus 2, but then the next step I put negative 1 equals x squared plus 4 plus 4x plus 2.
Well, you should have gotten, hold on just a second. So did you skip this step right here?
Yeah, I skipped the step where you added both.
Okay. As long as you ended up with this, then yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah, now you're going to distribute, which means that everything on the inside just changes to a negative. So negative x squared minus 4x minus 4 plus 7. And then I'm going to combine these terms. Whoops. Hold on. Okay. And then I get my final answer is y equals negative x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay.
So the next one, you should plug in the x's, like the.
Yeah, I'll show you. And we're not going to do example 6. We're only going to do example 5.
Is there no fraction work?
No. We'll wait till algebra 2 to get to that part. All right, so are there any questions for example 3 and 4? What? Okay, So example 6 is basically, or I'm sorry, example 5 is basically just practicing what we did on the previous page, and that's plugging in values for X. So anytime you see something like f of 2 and f of -2, what that is saying is that when the function of X is 2, what is Y? All right, so you could actually replace this with Y equals 2 and I'm sorry, X equals 2 and X equals -2, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm gonna write out this equation here. So f of X equals 2 times X plus 7 squared minus 2. And you're going to plug 2 into the equation for X and solve for Y. Then we'll do -2. It's two separate works. So we have 2 times 2 plus 7 squared. I got my 2 from this up here, minus 2. And now this time we don't have to FOIL out or distribute out the binomial because we have a number in here. So this would be 2 plus 7 is 9. And then 9 squared is 81. 2 times 81 is 162. And 162 minus 2, Y equals 160. That's easy enough, right? All right, I want you guys to do the same thing that we did here for -2. So plug -2 into the X, and then we'll come back and check our answer. So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten. Now, it does say to rewrite it into standard form, then solve, but really you can do either. You can rewrite it into standard form and solve, or you can solve just using the Vertex form. Okay, I think using the Vertex form is easy. And we are going to skip example 6. And we're going to move on to the back. Okay, before we move on to the back, I want you to look at your homework again. Actually, I'm going to go back to page 3. Let's look at your homework again. For problems 1 through 8, it says for each quadratic function in vertex form, that just means that it's currently in vertex form. You want to find the vertex, the axis of symmetry, whether how it opens, up or down, and then the domain and range. There is no graphing here.
Wait, so is there like room to do like?
I'm sorry?
Is it alright if you just like write it? Or like underneath it?
If it's neat, yes, but there is part of this homework on the back page and down here that you will not be able to do on this paper. And all of this for 1 through 8 is what we did right here for examples 3 and 4 without turning it into standard form. Okay, so it's just this right here. Okay.
So
Most of this, yes, you will have to. Yes, do it on a separate sheet of paper. I'm just going to say that for everybody. That way I don't have to go back and forth when I grade it. Now this one, you have to take these equations and you need to rewrite them into standard form. So you have to turn them into standard form. That would be like what we did here for examples 3 and 4. We took the equation and we turned it into standard form. Then it says, use either form. You can use either form to solve for X being 1 or -1. So X equals 1 and X equals -1. So in this case, you're turning them into standard form And then you're either using standard form or the vertex form to find y when x is 1 and y when x is -1. So you can use either form if you want. Okay. So that's the front page of your homework. Are there any questions on what you're doing for that? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to page 4 of our notes. And page 4 is going to, on your homework, is 18 through or 19 through 21. So page 4 of notes, if you wanted to write that down. All right, here we go. So on example 7, we have a parabola with a vertex that's -2, -5. And it passes through 6 and 635, okay? So what that is saying is that this is the vertex of your parabola, and this is some other ordered pair or point that lies on your parabola. And what we're going to do is we want to put it in vertex form and turn it into standard form. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to substitute the numbers into the vertex form. We're going to solve for A, and then we're going to convert to standard form. 3 steps. So first of all, I want to label these numbers up here. In the vertex form, what would -2 be? Well, we're using this form up here. So is it Y, A, X, H, or K? H. This is H. What is -5? K. What is 6? X. Oh, you said 8. Yeah, it's X. And then 635 is f of x, which is just y. What are we missing? We're missing A. In order to do this, we have to have A. So what we're going to do is we're going to do step 1. We're going to substitute all the numbers that we have down here in example 7, and we're going to plug it into the vertex form of the equation. Okay, this is vertex form up here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to write out the vertex form of the equation. So f of x equals A times x minus h plus k. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in everything that we have. Okay, what is f of x or y in all these numbers? Which part of both of these ordered pairs represents f of x or y? 635. We don't know what A is. That's what we're trying to figure out. X, oh, I forgot my little squared right here. X is 6. H is -2. So minus a -2, I had to think about that for a minute, is what? But we change that minus a -2. Plus, we change it to plus a positive, okay? And then my K is -5, -5. Now what we're gonna do well, first, are there any questions on how to plug in all those numbers? So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna solve this. This is just a normal equation that we're gonna solve for A. So the first thing we have to solve for is what is in parentheses. So we're going to solve for parentheses first. And we get 635 equals A times 8 squared minus 5. Yes. If you wanted to skip that, you could. Now we have to square 8. So we get 635 equals A times 64, but I'm not going to write, I'm going to write 64A. Now we have to add 5 to both sides. And we get 640 equals 64A. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 64A. or 64, I'm sorry. Yep. So. All right, so we have just figured out A. So what I'm gonna do is oops, you can't see all that. I'm going to plug A into the Vertex formula or equation without my other ordered pair. So I'm just gonna use my Vertex and my A. So we would write it as f of x equals, my A is 10 times x plus 2 minus 5. So what I did was I just plug in Vertex and A only. Okay. And this is one part of my answer. But now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into standard form. Are there any questions about that so far? It's a lot of information, right? It's a lot. No, you may not. All right, I want you to go, oh, I keep forgetting my squared here. I want you to go ahead and I want you to turn this equation into standard form on your own. We've done it several times already. And I'm going to pause the video. Okay, go ahead and check your work.
Wait, that's not the right. We need that one already.
That's right. So what I want you to do is I want you to check each step of your work
Oh, shoot.
and make sure that you.
Ooh,
Oh. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is example 8. We're gonna skip example 9. Okay, we're not gonna do that one. I just want to do example 8. 40? Because when I distributed this 10, see how I have, did you get this right here? X squared plus 4x plus 4. I had to distribute the 10 to everything. Okay. We're going to do example 8, and we're going to go ahead and label our ordered pairs. And then I want to give you a chance to plug them in on your own to make sure you know how to do that. So remember that in the vertex, 4 is H and 0 is K. And it passes through another ordered pair. And so this ordered pair would represent X and f of X or Y. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to take the vertex form of the equation. Oops, that should be H. And I want you to plug these numbers in, and then we're going to check to make sure you plugged in correctly, and then I'm going to have you solve it. Okay, so go ahead and plug those numbers in. Okay, so you should have 10 equals A times X, which is -1. And our H is 4, so -4 squared plus 0. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, now I want you to solve for A. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to solve for A on your own. Okay, go ahead and check to make sure you got the right answer for A. Okay, now what you're going to do is we are going to plug the 2/5 into the A for our equation, and we're going to use this this equation right here, except we're not going to have X or Y. So we're going to have f of X equals 2/5 times x minus 4 squared plus 0. And we're gonna solve this, and I know that it is a fraction, but we can do that. So I want you to try to do your best with the fraction. And then you will end up with lots of fractions at the end, but let's go ahead and do this together. Okay. So we're gonna have 2/5 times x minus 4 times x minus 4. And we don't really need that plus 0. Okay, so I'm gonna eliminate that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to do this right here and distribute my binomials. Okay, now I'm going to distribute my 2/5, and because it's multiplying, it's a little bit easier. So 2/5 times x squared equals 2/5 x squared. 2/5 times a -8. Now I'm going to remind you how to multiply fractions. 2/5 times a -8, which we put a 1 under the -8, and we just simply multiply straight across. 2 times -8 is -16, 5 times 1 is 5. So in this case, we have minus 16 over 5x. We do the same thing with 2/5 times 16. 2/5 times 16 over 1 is 32 over 5. So we have plus 32 over 5. And that would be our answer right there. So again, on your homework, on 19, 20, and 21, you're going to use page 4 of your notes. So this is page 4, what we just did. Okay. Great. Let's go ahead and go to page 5. Page 5 is the last 4 problems of your homework. It's 22 through 25. Okay. We're not going to do that one. Mm-mm. No. Oh, no, we're not going to do number 9. We're skipping number 9. We're moving to number 10. Okay, let's look at this one. We have a graph, and we're just going to look at the graph, and we're going to figure out a vertex. We're going to choose some random ordered pair, and then we're going to write it into vertex form. So our vertex is the center point of the graph. So our vertex is what? Yep, -3, 4. Okay. Now we're going to choose some random ordered pair. I like to choose ordered pairs that have a 0 in it or that have smaller numbers. So I'm going to choose this ordered pair right here, which is -1, 0. So that's my ordered pair. And up here in step 1, it says determine the vertex HK. So remember, the -3 here represents H and the 4 represents K. We did that. Choose a point from the graph that crosses the intersection. This is a random point. Random point of your choosing. Okay, random point of your choosing. But it needs to cross an intersection, meaning it needs to be whole numbers. I don't want half numbers. So for example, I wouldn't want you to choose on this graph -1.52, right? We won't want that. Okay, So right now, what we have to do is we're gonna do exactly what we did on the previous page. We're gonna put these points into, this is X, this is Y, into vertex form and then convert it to standard form. But what do we need to do before we can put it into vertex form? What do we need? We have to find the A. So here we go. We're gonna do this all over again. We have f of x equals A times x minus h plus k. And we're gonna plug these in to find A. So we have f of x is y, so that's 0. We don't have A. Our x is -1. And our h is -3. So minus and negative would make it a +3. And then +4, which is k. Okay. All right, I want you to go ahead and solve this for A. And then I want you after that to write the vertex form of the equation before we go to the standard form. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and give you time to work. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for the vertex form right here. So A was -1. Okay, and then I wrote it into vertex form. So are there any questions about that? Good. All right, so now what I want you to do is I want you to take the vertex form here and I want you to turn it into standard form. And I'm going to give you time to do that on your own as well. So I'm going to pause the video. All right. You should have gotten standard form right here. X -x² minus 6x minus 5.
Put that F(x), right?
Yeah, you can use that.
We're gonna do the next one.
Yes, you are gonna do the next one. I want you to do the next one all by yourself. Use example 10 to help you. Okay. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'm gonna pause the video. Real quick, before we move forward on this, what ordered pair do you guys want to choose for the vertex form? 3, 0. 3, 0 would probably be the better choice. So I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit. So I'm going to choose this one right here. And put that right here. Okay. All right. Now you can finish on your own. Okay. When you're finished, go ahead and check your answer. And these two problems, I'm going to put the homework up for just a second. You can do these page 5 of notes. And then we're going to skip 26. So cross off 26. And then on 22 through 25, you're going to look at page 5 of your notes. Okay. So that concludes our lesson for 8-4, vertex form of a quadratic function.